When you think of Palestine, you may think of massacres, land seizures, and Israel's decades-long occupation. But what you might not know is that another country played a driving role in the mass displacement of Palestinians. For centuries under Ottoman rule, Palestine was a religiously diverse land where Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived alongside one another harmoniously for the most part. Then in the early 90s, a small number of European Jews began trying to drum up support for Zionism and the establishment of a Jewish homeland following the launch of the modern Zionist movement by Theodor Herzl at a conference in Switzerland in 1897. The founders of the movement, which did not have much support among the diaspora Jews at the time, decided that they would advocate for a Jewish state in Palestine, even though only around 8% of the population of Palestine was Jewish. During that same period, Arab nationalism was gaining momentum across the Middle East, including among Palestinian Arabs who opposed both colonial rule and growing Zionist ambitions in Palestine. Imperial Britain, fully aware of these conflicting aspirations, sought to exploit these dynamics to serve its own colonial interests. In 1915, Henry McMahon, Britain's representative in Cairo, approached Arab leaders with a proposal. Britain would agree to Arab independence if they joined the Brits in the war against the Ottomans. Then in 1917, Britain's Foreign Secretary Lord Balfour sent a one-paragraph letter to Walter Rothschild, a leading figure in the British Jewish community. It read, "His Majesty's government views the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this objective." The proposal outlined in this letter, which became known as the Balfour Declaration, contradicted a declaration made by the British and French armies in 1918, assuring the people of Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia of autonomy. This contradictory declaration was not isolated. It followed earlier conflicting commitments by Western colonial powers, most notably the secret 1916 Sykes-Picot Agreement, in which Britain and France had already agreed to divide large parts of the Arab provinces between themselves. Britain had essentially promised independence to the Arabs living in Palestine, but also pledged a homeland for Jews on land that was already inhabited. Were the British simply transferring land that did not belong to them to whoever they liked? When the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1918, the League of Nations decided to give Britain a mandate, or administrative control of Palestine. In 1920, the Brits began their mandate, tasked with acting on behalf of both indigenous Palestinians and the Jews who wanted to colonize Palestinian land. Britain then decided to draw up arbitrary borders, transferring the eastern bank of the Jordan River to the Hashemites, who later founded today's Kingdom of Jordan. It was under the British mandate that European Jews began to emigrate to Palestine and buy up land. The Jewish population in Palestine grew tenfold from 60,000 to more than 600,000 between 1918 and 1947, and many Palestinians saw the mass influx of Jews as a European colonial movement. So, as one might expect, Palestinians began to resist, and in 1929, riots broke out at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and many Palestinians and Jews were killed in the violence. But Jewish immigration only increased after the revolts, leading to more frustrations among the indigenous Palestinians and hence more riots. The British response was heavy-handed, and some 5,000 and 7,000 Palestinians were killed during another round of violence between 1936 to 1939. A Royal British Commission had in fact concluding in 1930 that in allowing mass immigration of Jews into Palestine, Britain had created two distinct societies that couldn't be reconciled. Britain's solution, a partition of the land. The Arab Higher Committee, the main Palestinian political organ at the time, rejected the proposal, saying it was all Palestinian land. Britain banned the Arab Higher Commission and introduced the White Paper of 1939. It stated that Palestine should be a binational state inhabited by Jews and Palestinians, but that Jewish immigration would be limited for 5 years. However, illegal immigration was on the rise, and violence continued to erupt. Britain finally reached a point where it couldn't handle the mess it had a part in creating, and handed Palestine back to the UN. It was in 1947 that the UN decided to partition Palestine, and soon thereafter, Zionist militias violently expelled over 750,000 Palestinians, 80% of the Palestinian population at the time, from their homes and land, killing thousands of people and ethnically cleansing over 400 Palestinian villages to form the State of Israel. Zionist gangs may have been the ones to expel Palestinians from their homeland, but the British promising land that already belonged to Palestinians to other people paved the way for decades of occupation and bloodshed.
My mother was born and lived in Nazareth and married my father there in 1932. They had to register the wedding. And together, they went to the Palestine government mandatory office. The official there was an Englishman. And my mother said that she watched him sort of rip up her passport. And he, in amazement, my mother said, well, why are you doing this? He said, well, now you'll travel on your husband's passport. And she said, yes, but I mean, why did I have to lose mine in that way? And he said, well, because your place and this card is going to be given to a Jewish immigrant to Palestine.